Look, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, I had somebody that I cared about. Somebody I had to look after. And in this world, that sort of shit's good for one thing. Getting you killed.
When I was first writing this video, I was literally going from scene to scene to discuss how The Last of Us was a masterpiece. From every gameplay encounter to every cutscene through every level, I ended up writing up until maybe the 3 or 4 hour mark of the game, which is about a fourth of the way through. I only stopped because I realized that I ran out of ways to keep praising this game, despite it deserving even more than I could give. The Last of Us is a storytelling masterpiece, and Naughty Dog outdid themselves in just about every aspect when it comes to the making of this game in order to tell an emotional, deeply personal, and involving story. Just a few disclaimers before this video essay begins. First off, I am aware that The Last of Us has flaws. No shit. It's like saying the grass is green at this point. You can point out any flaw that you would like, and it's okay to not like the game because of it. But in my opinion, none of this game's flaws is enough to deter me from calling it a masterpiece. Second off, this game is hugely personal to me in multiple ways, so that may contribute to me giving it a lot of brownie points. I first picked it up on the PS4 on the Christmas of 2015. That's back when I first got a PS4. And it was my first dip into the next gen at that time of consoles. During that time, I was in a really awkward state. I was moving away from all my friends to a foreign country, many of who I accept was just not going to be able to keep contact with me. Not only that, but there were many issues I struggled with involving mental health at the time of playing it. It helped me sort of see things through a lens for a while with its message and characters. And not to mention that I kind of want to be a dad when I get older. It's something I can see myself doing in the way further future. And I look forward to that, if I ever manage to pull that off. Before we talk about the story, we gotta talk about what makes a game a game. The thing that comes first when making any game. The game. Play. The gameplay is as smooth as butter. Sneaking around feels good, and the cover system is nicely implemented, and you don't have to glue your character to a wall in order to be safe from being rained on with bullets. There are a lot of options within your stealth and how you want to approach a situation that the game doesn't just say you can do. Despite the game being really accessible, it still treats you like an adult, and it allows you to improvise some situations based on what the mechanics present to you. The game, especially on harder difficulties, is just as unforgiving as the narrative wants you to believe it is. Sneaking around enemies is intense and requires perfect timing with distraction objects and stealth kills to properly navigate. Getting caught in stealth isn't usually an instant game over, but if you're not prepared or near cover, you can be gunned down within seconds. The gunplay itself is tight, easy to control, and rewards accuracy with quick kills. And accurate you will need to learn to be. Bullets are incredibly scarce, making each time you miss a shot feel like a genuine waste, while the situation only escalates from there. And trust me, I've never clenched my ass harder than the times I was opening fire on an instant killing infected, only to miss some of my bullets while the ones I did land didn't stop its rampage at me. Bullets and crafting items being so rare only encourages the player to search through the optional parts of every level. The levels are built to compensate for this by always telegraphing through visual cues where the objective is, but also giving pointers to where the optional, although helpful areas are. However, there is often risk and reward at play. You may need ammo for further encounters, and there is likely some in a nearby shed or something. But on the way there are multiple enemies that can threaten to alert everything nearby if you fail to get around them efficiently, or if you are not prepared for a fight. There are numerous enemy types that will dynamically test your reflexes and thinking as a fight breaks out. These enemies can be sorted into two categories: infected and human. Humans are equipped with different guns or weapons to assault your position, and what results in these fights is a slow game of chess. You'll move around the area, ducking in and out of cover as they do the same, each of you hoping that you can avoid the other's gunfire. The weapons they have often affect how they fight as well. Shotgunners will try to flank your position and get close to blast you to pieces. Enemies with pistols will get in medium range, ready to shoot or hit you if you get too close. And enemies with melee weapons will run in and out of cover to attempt to get close enough to force you into a confrontation with them, while calling their buddies over if they have you occupied. The infected, meanwhile, are a melee-focused enemy that rely on different tactics to hunt the player down. They are split into 4 different categories: runners, stalkers, clickers, and bloaters, each more threatening than the last. This is not only useful for identifying how to deal with situations in the game, but it also supports the lore, as each infected type represents how deep in the stages of infection every enemy is. Runners are newly infected and in their desperate craze will charge to your position mindlessly. Stalkers are few and far between, I found, but they do pose a peculiar threat when they do arrive. These enemies, due to their now breaking down mind, will jump in and out of cover in a primal fashion. They also are quite frankly terrifying to be pit against in the dark, as each of them dynamically jump out at you once you're close enough to be surrounded. Clickers are nasty little cauliflower monsters blinded by their growing infected tumor that can only detect you using sound. But the catch is, if they touch you, that's it. Game over. No matter what difficulty you're on, no matter how much health you have, they will kill you in one hit. The only way to survive this is that if you find an upgrade later in the game that lets you use an entire shiv just to survive one attack. The bloaters are like clickers, except they are huge, they have range attacks, and they are absolutely shit-your-pants terrifying.
This ain't gonna hold him for long. That don't sound good. Oh no.
What the fuck is that?
Ellie, take cover.
While also juggling every single one of these enemy types, there is also the crafting system. This system lets you take materials you find from the world and put them to use by creating makeshift bombs, insta-kill stealth shivs, Molotov cocktails, and first aid kits. The catch is that in order to maintain the intensity, all the crafting is done in real time. When you go into the menu, you don't pause the game. Instead, you duck down right where you're standing and you sort through your backpack. While you can prepare prior to any engagements, having to build something on the fly while gunfire flings just above your head, or while the infected screech and roar while getting closer and closer to your position can throw you off. Not only is it tense given the situation, but it also has the potential to mess with your own flow. If you become nervous and you can't keep your cool while trying to create something you need under pressure, it can mean the difference between life and death. While much of the gameplay revolves around combat and crafting to prepare for it, another part is exploration. This includes moments such as the aforementioned optional areas, as well as finding diaries and notes left by survivors of the infection years prior, like puzzle solving, and moments of reveling in the beautifully detailed environments, as you journey from point A to point B. This allows for some breathing room and small moments of relaxation and recovery from the more intense gunfights and story moments. Though the emphasis is placed on combat and its mechanics, these somber moments are just as necessary to the narrative The Last of Us creates in its actual storyline. Now that the gameplay is out of the way, let's dig into why you're here. Why the title is what it is. The Last of Us is a masterpiece in storytelling. One of the reasons why the story is so strong is because the gameplay helps make it all so believable. We believe the struggles that our characters go through. And boy oh boy, the characters in this game are sublime. Our two main protagonists, Joel and Ellie, are among the most realized ever. Even outside of video games, I put them up there as some of the best written of all time. The two's dynamic is an emotional roller coaster, as heartbreaking as it is heartwarming. The supporting cast, both protagonists and antagonists, are just as brilliant with varying personalities, goals, ideals, and character arcs. None of the supporting characters really fall flat. They all feel as rounded as possible, and they're given as much screen time as they need, neither overstaying or understating their welcome. Some stick around longer than others, and some end up more alive than others, but it all feels right with how the story treats them. Sam, Henry, Tess, Bill, Marlene, Tommy, Riley, all these characters show up at some point in the main story, alongside our main characters, and all of them fit so perfectly in. Now, I can't further elaborate on Joel and Ellie if I don't talk about the story. Now, here is your spoiler warning. If you aren't concerned with spoilers, then stick around. We're going for a hell of a ride. I'll give you a good minute if you're like going out to buy the game right now or something. Good? We all present? Alright. The game starts off with an almost unsettlingly realistic depiction of a father-daughter relationship with Joel and his daughter Sarah. The relationship isn't perfect, mainly with Joel being away so often for work and Sarah being in school, but it manages to be so ideal anyways. The two just hang out. Sarah gives Joel his birthday gift. Joel pulls a fucking dad joke.
Honey, it's nice, but I think it's stuck. It's not...
What? No. Oh, ha ha.
Where did you get the money for this?
Drugs. I sell hardcore drugs.
Oh, good. You started helping out with the mortgage then.
Yeah, you wish.
It's all so fucking relaxed and well written that I'd pay just to see this for 20 more hours. Maybe some dish doing minigame or some intense action set piece where you have to wash the laundry. But then you remember that this is a tragic story and it's time to get intense and depressing as hell. Things start apocalypsing and going to hell in one of the coolest depictions of a zombie outbreak in the genre. It's a slow burn, but things eventually get ramped up to 11 when it's too late. We're introduced to Tommy, Joel's younger brother, and everyone escapes the infected in huge disasters together, up until Sarah gets shot to death.
Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on.
This scene is so well acted, so well written, and it all comes together so smoothly. The payoff is... well, let these reactions just tell you how effective it was.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Please.
Don't do this to me! I can't take this kind of shit! I'm gonna fucking cry! Oh, that's the intro to the game?
Listen to me. I know this hurts you. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on.
How on earth did I get this engrossed in this game in 15 minutes? This is insane.
No.
My eyes are wet. Like, oh my god! Jesus! Okay, wow.
Now, the game from here could have easily devolved into Joel being a grumpy, sad dad. It could have been a boring mess that devolved after such a strong intro, disappointing everyone. But then the game flashes up the words 20 years later, and Joel is a grandpa now. This change was necessary to avoid the typical, sometimes boring, angsty characters that we've seen before. It shows that despite someone so important to his life dying, Joel lived on with that memory. He wasn't out for revenge because who would he be looking to take it on? The guy that Tommy then immediately killed? Instead, Joel is put in a situation where he is forced to move on, and I think that was really good in terms of writing. It allows the writers to play with the idea of what people would be like in the future, and it pays off well. We've talked about Joel enough to know what he is like and everything involving him. Ellie, on the other hand, is a 14-year-old girl raised in the hellish apocalypse. She is somehow immune to the infection present in the game, proving so after she reveals that she had been bitten a few weeks prior to meeting her, despite the infection only taking a day or two at the absolute most to kill someone. Ellie, personality-wise, provides a stark contrast to Joel. Where Joel is aged and used to the world as it has changed, this world is all Ellie has known. While she isn't immature or naive, she does explore around the different environments with a youthful sense of wonder. She may ask Joel about some old movie posters, or look around for scattered issues of a comic series she tends to follow. At the same time, she is very capable of killing both infected and humans, and grows throughout the story as a person. While she does become disillusioned to just how bad things can be in this world, she never loses her good faith. The game is split into 4 sections narrative-wise: summer, fall, winter, and spring. Summer represents all these characters meeting up and getting a brief introduction to each other. Fall is about Joel and Ellie butting heads here and there, but ultimately coming together by the end to become a more friendly duo despite everything. Winter is about the characters at their absolute worst. Joel and Ellie are separated, and both their strengths and wills are put to the ultimate test. We also get to see how they react to things on their own after playing as them for so long. And yeah, you get to also play as Ellie for a bit, which is fucking awesome. And spring is their reunion, coping with trauma and ultimately the final act of the game. All 4 of these chapters are incredibly well written, as I've already said before, and splitting them off into 4 different cohesive sections was a very smart move, so that each of them can be digested as their own part to the story. But the strongest of these 4 chapters is definitely fall, with winter likely at a close second. The players get so much time invested in these characters, and Joel and Ellie both go through so many developments, gaining and losing friends along the way. In this time, their relationship hits pivotal moments that threaten to shatter everything. Like any real relationship, they have to communicate and compromise with each other in order to come to an understanding. This results in some highly emotional moments without only having to rely on character deaths to get an emotional reaction out of the player. Nothing on killing your characters, I mean the game itself does it. But I do not remember the last time I played a game and something that wasn't a well-acted death or sacrifice genuinely made me cry like this scene did.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel, but I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
Besides these more intense and emotionally taxing scenes, there are also the relaxing ones that help space out the narrative and give the player a little breathing room. Joel and Ellie casually talking with whoever is around, as well as just one another, helps them build off of each other and makes their growing relationship feel more believable as time goes on. They talk, make plans, joke, reminisce, everything anyone does, and it's helpful especially since the rest of the game is so intense. It's also very telling that despite the infected being such a terrifying menace, and was a huge part of the marketing, despite Joel being a rough surviving vet and Ellie being raised in a world of violence, the most iconic scene in the game from those who have played it was the giraffe scene.
Don't scare it.
I won't.
What are you doing?
It's all right. Come here. Hurry up. Come on.
Hey there. So fucking cool.
It's beautiful, it's emotional, There's some symbolism there involving family and purity. It's a joy to look at and allows the characters to reflect. It's just perfect. The talk after that between Joel and Ellie holds some serious implications and a bit of foreshadowing for the very end, but it still manages to be in a very easing context. The general idea of the plot is that Joel has to deliver Ellie to a military resistance group known as the Fireflies. You get to meet their leader briefly, Marlene, and you learn that they're in a pretty beat up state. That they're the underdogs of the fight against the remnants of the United States military. You meet Marlene once at the start of the game when you go to meet Ellie, and then once at the end when you deliver Ellie. The entire point of the smuggling job was to get Ellie to the Fireflies' doctors so that they could find out why she was immune and see if they couldn't reverse engineer a cure to save humanity. However, Joel soon figures out after he delivers Ellie that despite everything they went through, despite everything they both fought and survived, that the manufacturing of such a cure would be her death. Moral dilemmas such as these always crop up throughout the game, and they give a player a lot of time to think about them, about who is worth saving for what reason and why, and you have to consider just about everything. And even though it's Joel and Ellie ultimately making the decisions, you still feel just as invested as they would be due to the writing quality and as well as the presentation. At the ending of the game, when Joel is told that Ellie would die, he's hesitant to even leave the building because of that. Obviously, he would be. He just abruptly found out that the one person that he could find himself at all attached to in the apocalypse after Tess's death was also going to fade away from him. But what happens after had my jaw practically flying at the ground.
What the fuck are you doing? Keep walking. I said keep walking. Where's the operating room? I ain't got time for this. Where? Where? Top floor, the far end.
I honestly wish that more writers pulled this shit like this off. Things go dark instantly. Joel kills whoever he can and that is in the way to get through the corridors of the repurposed hospital. The environment itself of this level is claustrophobic and Joel is on his own and is pretty much acting on primal instinct to protect his loved ones and is not letting an army stand in the way of that. The entire situation is grim, unnerving, and unsettling as you watch the character you've inhabited for a majority of the game to go to savage lengths to prove that he's willing to do anything, even pry what could be the last hope of a cure to save humanity away from the world, just to protect his daughter. Joel actually manages to save Ellie from being killed and escapes the hospital, running into and killing Marlene on the way to a truck. He does not do so out of a wish for vengeance for daring to take away someone he loves, and he does not do so just because she just happened to be there. He does it for a very simple and logical reason.
Wait! Let me go! Please.
You just come after her.
Because he knows that he would do the same thing as her. Joel drives away from the hospital, practically avoiding the consequences of taking on a military group altogether, with Ellie in the back of the truck. She wakes up confused and asks what's up, and Joel half lies, half truths his explanation. Joel is the protagonist, but by no means is he a typical hero or even anti-hero at this point. He just feels like a guy. Whether or not you agree with what he did is all up to you, because he is not you. You controlled him through gameplay, but Joel was still his own man. The fact that many players felt contradicting emotions even as they killed their way through the hospital, as this man, says enough. The idea that Joel is his own character besides the one that you control is further cemented when it cuts back to gameplay and you get to play as Ellie for the last minute of the game. Now that being said, Despite the controversy that the ending brewed up at launch, despite everything Joel did at the ending just to save Ellie, I have a bit of a hot take. I believe that Joel was completely justified in taking Ellie back from the Fireflies, and what he did for the most part was necessary in order to save her, and saving her life was the best course of action that could have possibly been taken, even when walking away from the Fireflies and letting them do their work was an option. Let me explain. The Fireflies throughout the game were portrayed as a mere underdog, but when you peel back the curtain, there is a clear reason why. This military group is barely hanging by a thread. Whenever you run into them, they are shown to be beaten, dead, or just generally defeated. And that is because the Fireflies are ran by absolute bumbling idiots who have no idea what they're doing. When you first see the Fireflies, they execute a terrorist attack on the military that potentially could and very well may have resulted in innocent people's deaths. Throughout the city at the start, you see them beat to hell and back, explosions in the distance, implying their numerous defeats as they retreat back into hiding. And not to mention that Marlene got the hell beat out of her just before meeting Joel. The first time you find the Fireflies after meeting Ellie is back when Tess dies. They're just a bunch of corpses of the people that you were supposed to drop Ellie off at. Now you can say that this was an unfortunate circumstance where the military just happened on them, but paired with everything else they screwed up along the way, this is just one of their blunders on top of the pile resting on the camel's back. They chose the location to meet Joel at, yet apparently they did not bother seeing if the military patrolled in that area, and it's not like the military just up and decided to search that area on that day. They've been in the city for over 20 years. Whether or not they would show up is something that should be very well known, something that the Fireflies neglected when making their plans. Another example of the Fireflies being total clueless idiots is when you go to see if they are at the college, another point where Joel was supposed to drop Ellie off to be delivered to make a cure. This also fails because the Fireflies are dead here too, though through an audio recording it is discovered that the reason the facility fell apart was because they were doing experiments with monkeys carrying the human strain of the cordyceps disease. The leading scientist there was so stupid and so careless that he let one of the monkeys out of the cage. The monkey bit him, infecting him with the disease, and rather than properly warning everyone and taking the necessary actions to make sure that nobody would join in his now inevitable death, he ends up getting everyone killed and forcing whoever was still alive to relocate. And yet another blunder is when Joel and Ellie finally find the Fireflies. Just before this scene, Ellie and Joel barely survive a harrowing encounter inside a flooded tunnel with rushing water that nearly drowns Ellie to death. Joel manages to get her on solid land and begins doing CPR to, have her not die. Firefly soldiers stumble on them and their reaction is honestly the dumbest thing you could possibly do.
Hands in the air!
She's not breathing.
Hands in the fucking air!
Come on.
A note earlier in the game confirms that the Fireflies know what Ellie looks like with a physical description of her height, hair color, and physical features. These people should be aware that they are receiving her any day now. Joel clearly poses no threat to these men and is obviously trying to save Ellie's life, yet this is their reaction. Last but not least out of the examples I can name off the top of my head, a note in the hospital level implies that there are actually many other people that came to the Fireflies once they discovered that they were also immune. However, despite their attempts, a cure was failed to be manufactured and the patient was killed in the process. This would not only make what Joel said in the truck for the most part not a lie, but also call into question the probability of Ellie's operation if it even did go through. I believe that even if they happened to crack the code to making a cure with their attempt on Ellie, they would not have even had enough organization to properly manufacture and produce it before they ended up losing it through getting killed by something because the people managing the Fireflies are so foolish, or the cure just was not able to be mass produced. So yeah, the Fireflies would have gotten nowhere with Ellie, and keeping her alive was the best thing to do. because yet another failed attempt at a cure in the hands of the people too irresponsible to handle such a task would not be worth this innocent girl's life. Even the writing beside, I think the fact that the game's ending has enough of these nuances to create such a controversy without trying too hard to aim for that goes to show its quality. Its impact on so many games, especially the library of PlayStation exclusives, can be felt even today since its launch about 6 years ago. It's this writing quality that makes me excited to see everyone reprising their roles for The Last of Us Part 2, which I hope to God is coming out this year because, wow, it looks incredible. The Last of Us is a modern masterpiece in storytelling, and is many times rightfully seen as the spearhead of what sorts of emotional stories games can tell. The character writing is grade A material. The ending is impactful even to this day. It portrayed an adoptive family dynamic in a realistic way with both the complications and love that can arise on full display. It's beautiful what this game managed to do for the industry, proving that these sorts of games are not dying despite what some absolute cancerous companies may wish to imply. The Last of Us is one of the most memorable experiences ever crafted. It is an essential experience to anyone who enjoys any sort of video game or even any sort of story, and its legacy will be felt in days to come, both in and outside of the video game industry.